surveillance of AMR in UK retail meats and looking particularly at the trends. And much of what I'm presenting here is down to the hard work of the APHA colleagues who have carried out the surveys. So a big thank you to you, and hopefully some of you are on the call, and do please feel free to sort of chip in with any more detail, as this is fairly high level. First, I just want to start with a brief overview of the policy context for those of you who are less familiar with antimicrobial resistance. And in 2014, the UK government commissioned an independent review on antimicrobial resistance. This was led by Jim O'Neill, and this was really to examine the growing threat of AMR, both from an economic perspective and really to recommend solutions. What could we do about this global problem, really? And that review estimated that unless action is taken, the burden of deaths from AMR would increase from 700,000 in 2016 to 10 million each year by 2050, at a cumulative cost of around 100 trillion US dollars, and potential death toll of one person every 3 seconds. And that's really as a result of, the antibiotics that we all heavily depend on. Basically, they stop working. So what are we doing about it in the UK? In January 2019, the government published its vision for AMR, and that vision is for AMR to be contained and controlled by 2040. And in support of that vision, there was also a commitment to develop a series of 5-year national action plans as a cross-government mechanism to implement that vision. The first 5-year National Action Plan was published alongside the vision in January 2019, and that will come to an end by March time next year. So the development of the next 5-year National Action Plan 24 to 2029, that process has already begun. It began last year, and I'll return to that National Action Plan at the end of my talk. So there are 8 delivery programs within the current National Action Plan, and delivery program 2 I've highlighted here in the red. That's led by DEFRA, and that covers animal health, food and the environment, and Food Standards Agency leads on the food work stream. And this is a very simplified picture of the spread of AMR, showing that food can become contaminated with AMR bacteria through the many different routes that I've suggested here. And but I think basically the take-home message is that the role of the food chain in terms of AMR, it is really poorly understood at the moment. So what's our role in the AMR National Action Plan? The plan includes a specific section on the importance of better food safety to limit the contamination of foods and the spread of AMR. And that section of the plan also emphasises the need to strengthen the evidence base for AMR and food safety through research and surveillance, and promoting good hygiene practice across the food chain. So we have been filling evidence gaps on the role that food plays in AMR through commissioning research and surveillance. So let's take a closer look at that surveillance in meats. And firstly, just want to mention that during the EU harmonised survey on AMR and retail meat between 2015 and 2020, sampling really alternated year by year, with 300 beef and 300 pork samples taken one year, that was 2015, 17 and 19, and then the next year 300 chicken samples, so 2016, 18 and 20. Sampling was representative of 80% of the retail market, the retail market share, and 80% population coverage of the UK. Samples were taken at random and included both UK and non-UK meat, basically what's on the UK market, and provided data on what consumers are exposed to at retail. So following the UK's exit from the EU at the end of January 2020, well, there was no obligation for the FSA to continue to follow the specification for the EU harmonised surveillance, but it actually made sense for us to do so, really to allow comparison of the data from previous years and to monitor and for us actually to compare ourselves to what's happening across the EU as well. So in October 2020, courtesy of our AFA colleagues, a 5-month AMR survey on lamb and turkey meat at retail sale in the UK was carried out, and that included 210 samples of each meat type. In 2021, a 3-month AMR survey from October to December was carried out on beef and pork at retail, and that was 105 samples of each meat type. And the most recent AMR survey undertaken by ourselves was carried out for 12 months from January to December 2022, and that's on chicken and turkey at retail. So that was 306 chicken and 302 turkey samples, and that final report, our APHA colleagues have submitted that, and that's just been finalised. So we hope to publish that shortly, probably October time. So during the EU harmonised monitoring survey of AMR in retail meats, only E. coli was tested for, and that covers the extended spectrum beta lactamases, that's ESBLs for short. Basically, they're enzymes that make some antibiotics ineffective. And it included the class C beta lactamases, referred to as AMP-C, and also included carbapenemase producing E. coli. But we chose to include testing for colistin resistance and colistin resistant MCR genes at the same time. And following the EU exit, in addition to AMR E. coli, we have also chosen to add on testing for AMR Campylobacter and AMR Salmonella, really as added value. So this table shows the overall AMR E. coli results obtained in retail meat from 2015 to 2022. We'll just sort of like look at the detail in a moment, but basically to say very low levels in beef and pork, higher levels in chicken, but I'm pleased to say that that trend is going down. And also to point out on the penultimate column here, carbapenem resistance, we haven't detected that in any of the meats that we've surveyed, and but the red in the final column, we've highlighted where we have detected colistin resistance, but again, as you can see here, very low levels. So this shows that the prevalence of the ESBL and AMP-C producing E. coli, because we weren't able to actually to separate those. Those E. coli in retail beef and pork meat from the years 2015 to 2021. It's remained very low. In 2021, there is a slight increase in prevalence, it's just under 4%. We have had a wee discussion internally and with APHA colleagues around that, and was it more an artifact in relation to the sampling frame for that in 2021? So it was slightly different, shorter time frame, fewer samples, etc. But generally, it's very low is the take-home message. And then the prevalence of the ESBL and AMP-C in retail chicken from 2016 to 2022. So I mentioned this is on the decreasing trend, which is good news. It was around 45% in 2016, now to around about 12%. And this, we believe, may be attributed to the decrease in use in antimicrobials across the poultry industry, because there's certainly evidence for that. In terms of the turkey meat, that's only been tested for since 2020, and again, the levels are fairly low and appear to be staying pretty constant. And then just to mention that our figures for ESBL and AMP-C, I think we compare favorably to the rest of EU member states, where we come in about 12.7%. So. And this graph shows the prevalence of MCR1 positive Colston resistance E. coli that I mentioned briefly in the table earlier. And I think what the key thing we want to mention was that it was not detected in pork meat samples in any of our surveys. It's only been identified the once in beef meat, that was in 2017, very low prevalence, less than 0.1, less than 0.5%. And for chicken, prevalence has increased since 2016 from 0 to 1.3%, but again, prevalence very low. And then turkey, similar. So their overall conclusions, the ESBL, AMP-C, E. coli in retail chicken meat, it has declined, as I said, from fairly high levels, 45% in 2016, and to 12% in 2022. So we're seeing a 33% reduction, which is really good news and reflects well on what industry has been doing in that place. And although the levels of ESBL, AMP-C, E. coli in retail beef and pork has remained fairly constant, the levels are very low in comparison to retail chicken meat. And given these very low levels, the pork and meat surveillance, we consider that a lower priority for continued surveillance in the future compared to poultry meat. No retail meat samples have been found positive for the last resort carbapenem antimicrobial since 2015, which is very good news. And then, as I've set out here, MCR1 Colston resistance, E. coli is increased in chicken and turkey, but still very low levels, less than 1.5%. And UKMR results in retail meats have compared favorably to the rest of the EU. And finally, that bullet point, that just really summarizes our consumer messaging in this space, that the AMR risk to consumers is very low, provided that meat is handled hygienically and cooked thoroughly. And some of you will be aware that the FSA's AMR Research and Surveillance Programme was reviewed in March 2023, and some of you were at that event. And this was really to identify and prioritise new and emerging challenges in food-related AMR and to inform the development of the new National Action Plan that I mentioned at the beginning of the talk. This AMR review identified surveillance of poultry meat, specifically chicken and turkey, as the top priority for continued surveillance. Fresh produce was also ranked high. That was our second priority, primarily due to the challenges in agricultural practices and the risk of AMR spread, particularly when the product is consumed raw or undercooked. Fish, followed by beef, pork, and lamb, were next in the priority order, and raw pet food was ranked as the fifth highest surveillance priority, especially due to the increased popularity of raw pet food and the potential risk of this product would poses to human health, basically due to handling of the product. So the next steps in terms of our surveillance, the 2022 survey of AMR, E. coli, Campylobacter and Salmonella on chicken and turkey and meat and retail sale. As I mentioned, the publications shortly. We have got an ongoing survey of AMR bacteria and raw pet food on retail sale in the UK, and that's going to report late in 2024. We do have some interesting results from that project, from that surveillance already, and we're working with our policy and comms colleagues in relation to how we prepare for sort of like the media messages in relation to that survey. We've got a new survey planned for 2023 on AMR, E. coli, and Listeria species in chilled, raw, pre-packed, farmed salmon fillets on retail sale in the UK. So that reflects sort of like the top 5 priorities that were coming out of the review that I mentioned back in March this year. And it also is reflective of the industry practice, where we have evidence that antimicrobial use has really increased in recent years. There was the VARS report last year, which highlighted that as a particular problem. So we're keen to find out what the situation is on the product on the market. So we continue to consider those surveillance priorities that we identified back in March, and those outputs from the AMR review, they're informing the development of the food safety commitments and deliverables in the next National Action Plan. So let's look a wee bit more detail at that National Action Plan 2024 to 2029, and that's being developed in 3 phases. The first phase was last year, June to December, which was all about sort of like project initiation and evidence gathering. Phase 2 is the current phase that we're in, January to October, and that's around stakeholder engagement and content development. And phase 3 is November this year to March next year, basically, getting it ready for publication and review of that final package, etc. There'll also be a research strategy developed to support the National Action Plan and a top 10 research priorities. And just to look at the current phase 2 that we're in, we're at the stage where the high-level outcomes have been agreed across government. So the focus now is on the commitments and the deliverables. The commitments are close to being agreed, and we've all been asked to look in detail at our deliverables, and we've already submitted those draft deliverables just recently, last week actually. We were asked to complete that. We have also been invited to join a new monthly National Action Plan coordination group, and that's led by DEFRA, the VMD in particular. So that's really to help coordinate activities across the animal, plant, food and the environment sector. And I must say, I think that's going really well. And also there's a lot of stakeholder engagement. Jen Dow from the VMD, she's been leading that, and she's been encouraging stakeholders to join a webinar to make them aware of what's happening and to seek their views. And there's also a survey attached to that. So finally, I just want to acknowledge everyone who's been involved in the AMR programme, particularly our APHA colleagues who do the work, and that's Luke Randall, Kath Fernley and John Rogers. And that's all I wanted to cover.